Hi everyone, I'm back. So you can see I've got the motor at my house now and it's taking lots of room up, so I needed to find somewhere else to put it. The first thing I had to do is make a bracket that I could lift the motor up with that needed to be low profile so it could fit on the mezzanine, made of 20 by 100 solid steel. I plan to put a gantry where I'm pointing at. So I had to move some stuff and scrape some steel together, and this is what I came up with. Rated to 500 kilos, certified by me. I got it up there really good. Only a couple mil deflection. This is me putting the engine in for the first time. Got to admit, I was a little bit nervous, but it worked really well. I just wish I could have put a powered electric winch there instead of manual one. I couldn't find any that would fit with the carriages that I ended up going with that fit on the I-beam. So manual it is. So here I'm dummy mounting the motor for the first time. The gantry worked really well. It made it very easy. Here I am doing the engine mounts for holding the weight of the front of the motor and also bracing the torque of the motor as well. I squashed it onto some box to keep it straight. Here you can see this is where I'm putting the things that I just made, and I'm going to make some stainless steel plates with some bolts that go through the way that I've indicated. So now it's time to pull the motor back out so I can do some more work, dusty work, inside the boat. Now we're back at doing the water tanks or the stringers. At first I thought I'd be able to fiberglass through the holes like this down the whole way, but yeah, it didn't really work. Pretty painful to watch. I used a GoPro and my phone to see what I was doing, but I guess I could have done it, but it just would have been torture. Even more torture than what I ended up going with. Fiberglassing from the inside and the outside of the stringers will make it a lot stronger. You can see on the side, if I just use tape on one side of the paper, it peels off the table really easy. If I have it on both sides of the paper, it's a lot harder to pull apart. So back to the drawing board. After talking to my mate Dave on different ways we could do inside the stringers, we decided to go in from the top, so I made inspection holes in the top that I'll fiberglass back in later after I've done all the work. This will also be good because I can grind out the insides of the tank a lot easier. It'll still be a pain in the butt. I need to grind inside the tank to rough it up so the epoxy resin will bond to the insides of the tank better. I don't want it to delaminate. And I'm using epoxy resin rather than polyester or vinyl ester because the smell isn't so bad. I found out after I'd used epoxy resin that vinyl ester would have been the preferred way to make the water tank. Vinyl ester is a bit cheaper than epoxy and it's a little bit more expensive than polyester, but that's how they make all of the tanks. Here I'm grinding the mold of the stringers. It didn't really join into the hull really nice, which made it weak. That's why I looks shit too, making the curve nicer. This is where I'm epoxying the insides of the stringers. This took ages. I had to do everything in one hit here, non-stop, so I didn't have to grind in between layers. I bought a glue gun that I could jam epoxy resin into that I ended up wrecking after this job, but it was good enough to get this job done. Squeeze the epoxy resin into the corners. It was the fastest way I could think of to get the epoxy into the corners. While it was still wet, I applied the Fibreglass mat, which was 450 gram double bias. To wet the sheets out quickly, I would dip the brush in epoxy, then into acetone, and it would wet the sheets out, making it a lot easier to apply. Here's the dividers I made while I was doing all that work. I blocked the tanks from either end, so in future I can run wires and plumbing past the tanks under the floor. I also divided the tanks in half so I can play with the weight distribution, like if I have too many fat passengers on one side, seeing as most of the seating will be on the port side. Here I'm cleaning up the center stringer. More dust. I'm doing the baffles here. To make them, I would pre-make flat sheets of chop strand mat at least 2 layers thick using polyester resin, then cut whatever shapes out of that after it's hardened, and then blob them in wherever I wanted. Like this. I'm notching more out of the front of the stringer, so my step down under the roof will happen sooner because I'm extending the roof. I glued and glassed the bulkhead to the back of this stringer before I put it into the boat because it was easier than doing it once it was in the boat. Whilst all of this was happening, I finished glassing the original wooden center stringer, pretty much the only piece of wood left in the boat. It was still in good shape, so I didn't want to take it out. After I had laid the glass, I quickly sandwiched folded sheet metal backed with wood to give it a nice straight, smooth finish. The glass didn't like doing the bend on the top of the stringer, so the folded metal ensured a good bond. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out at start, so this was just a test run, but it turned out really good. So more grinding, and I ended up doing the entire stringer like I just said. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking about it being done and just being on the boat all nice and finished. It would be so luxurious compared to what we're used to. I keep thinking maybe I should have just bought a boat that was already done. After everything had hardened, I did another grind on the insides, especially where it was shiny, then lathered the insides of the stringer with another 2 coats of epoxy, then glued the stringer and bulkhead into place. While everything was wet, I went crazy with more fiberglass, and just on the insides only. Most of this video is sped up around 4,000 times. The opening next to the bulkhead next to the engine is actually going to be in an inspection hatch. The hole in the bulkhead near the motor is there for easy access to change the water pump impeller, so I don't need to lift the engine out to do it. Please like and subscribe, this took ages to make. Let me know if you have any suggestions or ideas. I'm not that much further with the boat and I don't have a job at the moment, so I'm going to really get stuck into this